Well, this is a very, very exciting day. It's like there's two highlights of the year for me. One is Blackpool, the other is the Fringe, and that's why we're here. I'm here, Richard Young, and I'm here with our fantastic contributor here on the podcast from time to time, Rob James. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good.
Very good, thanks. It's great to have you back, and this is going to be so exciting. For the next little while, we are going to preview the Edinburgh Fringe 2024. Which is very exciting. The little tagline this year is Unleash the Fringe. Unleash your Fringe. No idea what that means.
And they've got magic on the cover as well.
They have, yes. So on the cover of this year's main brochure, they've put 3 playing cards. So I think that proves that magic now definitely is becoming a bigger part of the Fringe. So listen, there's a lot of magic this year. 80 magic shows I counted. There's probably more that are not even in the brochure. And we're going to try to give the listener here, the subscriber, some true value, some great tips of things they should see. But we're going to start, we had a chat about this beforehand, we're going to start with just giving some overall Fringe tips, aren't we? So let me just ask you a direct question. If I was going to the Edinburgh Fringe this year for the very, very first time, how should I go about booking that trip? What should I look for? I know I've probably heard that it's quite expensive to go, but realistically, how much should I be looking to pay, and how long do I need to be there for a first trip?
Yeah, well, what was that noise?
That was my iPad and a BBC News. I'll turn that down.
Okay, I thought you timed it perfectly to try and mess with my head or something. What should you do? Well, you know, when you mention the Edinburgh Fringe to someone who doesn't go, they're often a bit sort of put off by it because they have absolutely no understanding of it whatsoever. Their knowledge of it might be something they saw on BBC Two Culture Show one year, and they might just think it's a comedy festival, or they might think it's expensive or whatever. And the truth of the matter, it is expensive if you do it a certain way, but it doesn't have to be. And I fully understand why it can be so overwhelming to someone that's never been before, because there's 3,500 shows on every day. 3 million people descend on the city.
It's crazy.
It's, accommodation costs go through the roof. It is a crazy thing if you don't know anything about it. But if you've never been before, then you can go up any length of time. It starts in the beginning of August and runs for 3 weeks. And if you want to go up for a night, 2 nights, if you live, in Newcastle on Tyne or something like that, and you can get there in 2.5 hours, you go up for the day. But when I go up, I usually go up for 4 or 5 nights midweek, because I tend to find that the Saturdays are very busy. In fact, the only time I've ever been there on a Saturday was a year when I did a show there myself, and I actually saw what Edinburgh is like at the weekend, and I thought it's too much, it's too crazy, because you get all the bus trips and people coming over from Glasgow and that sort of thing, and everyone locally takes advantage of the fact that the Fringe is in their city, and everywhere is absolutely rammed. So you don't have to be there the weekends. In fact, I would say that because there are shows on 7 days a week from 10 a.m. till 2 a.m. every day, you can go anytime you want. If you want to stay cheaply, my tip would be you either book it really far in advance, too late for that now because we're getting really close to the date, or you can play chicken with it a little bit and you can book very, very close to the date. Because what happens, people who own accommodation in Edinburgh, they're like close-up magicians, right? Their only objective is how much money can I get,
yes,
from this. And then the closer the date gets, the more they start to panic, and the more likely they are to drop their fee.
Yeah.
The same way, when people ask you in August for a quote for December, you're like, that's £2,000, right?
Yes.
But the day before, you're like, fuck, I'll take anything, right?
500 quid.
Yeah. So Edinburgh's the same. So there'd be people that are going, I reckon I can get 10k for my flat for the month. And then it gets close to the date and they go, oh, God, it hasn't happened. So you can go on Airbnb or booking.com and you can find bargains if you're prepared to book the day before or 2 days before. You can also get cheap prices if you are prepared to stay at an Airbnb in someone's house, right? So rather than having the whole accommodation to yourself, which is obviously preferable, there are lots of people that will rent out their spare room, or they'll move into their lounge and rent out their bedroom or something like that.
And I think it's worth dropping in at that point that you're not going to be there. That's the other thing. You are going to be so busy. You're going to be leaving at 10 in the morning and you're not going to get back till you're ready to go to bed, basically. So I wouldn't waste any money on going, oh, is this a really nice flat? Have we got a nice view? It's not going to be important, is it?
No. And in fact, if you're prepared to get a taxi or a bus, then and you're prepared to stay a little bit further out, that's also a cheaper way of doing it.
Some people even staying in Glasgow these days, aren't there?
Yep.
Because it's got so expensive. Mine's, I mean, I don't think I could do that, but there are trains that run from Glasgow to Edinburgh every 20 minutes or something. But yeah, that is definitely an option that some people, some of the performers are doing. They're coming in from Glasgow every
And
day.
some people will book camping. They will book a campsite.
Yeah.
You know, if you're prepared, if you're happy to do that. But if you think about the fact, like you said, all you're doing every day, you're getting up, you're having a shower, you're going out. That's it. You're out of the house for 12, 15 hours or something like that.
I did gamble, by the way. I'll tell you what I do is I go Sunday to Friday. So I arrive Sunday evening, I drive up normally, and then I stay all week, and then I get out of there.
You drive. Where do you park?
Right, so this is interesting, isn't it? You're not going to be able to park right in the centre of Edinburgh. You're just going to have to bear this in mind when you get there. You are not going to be able to park outside your hotel. But you're only looking at parking a mile or so out of town. So what I do very simply, when I'm looking at my sat-nav and I'm within 5 minutes of where I'm going to stay, at that point, I then start looking for somewhere to park. And so you're going to be a little bit out of the main bit of town, and then I will simply call an Uber from my car. Make sure you make a note where your car is, and then I will get an Uber the last little bit of the journey. It's a beautiful drive. If you live in the south of England, drive it all year.
Especially the last 2 hours.
My goodness, it's absolutely stunning. If you do fly up there, you're looking at a taxi from the airport to downtown, 20, 25 quid, something like that, isn't it? It's not going to be too crazy. So it's all right. So let's say, right, we've done it. We booked it. We're up there. And now, well, let's say this first of all. Let's say we're going next week. Do you create a schedule of all the shows you want to see now, or do you just get up there and say, let's just see what happens when we get up there? What would you do?
I've done it both ways.
Right.
The way you're talking about, the second way of doing it, relying on a bit of serendipity, talking to people about what they've seen, getting recommendations, walking up to the Royal Mile and allowing yourself to be flyered and pitched to, that sort of thing, is one way of doing it. And that's kind of fun. But if you're going up for a finite amount of time, I would take advantage of the fact that there's a lot of information online. There's a lot of stuff you can read, press releases that go out ahead of the Fringe. Also, if you go up in the second or the third week, by that point there will also be a bunch of reviews for a lot of the shows.
That's a great tip, actually. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So although the first week of the Fringe actually it can be a nice week to be there for a couple of reasons. It's not quite so busy. It's interesting. You go around. None of the posters around town have got stars or reviews stuck on them. Everything feels like a clean sheet of paper, big blank sheet of paper, and no one knows what the big shows are going to be. There's an air of expectation and excitement. By the second week, a bunch of shows have been reviewed. You can already probably tell which are going to be the hit shows. Shows start to sell out a bit more. The accommodation gets a bit more expensive, but you are able to be a bit more prepared. You're able to pick your shows a bit more carefully. And I think if you're a bit more discerning, that's a better way to do it. So what I tend to do is at this stage, I've already gone through the brochure. I've gone through it and I've made a note of shows which I think look interesting. I'll also make a note of maybe performers I've seen before who I liked. Maybe there's some people that, even if I like them, I might not necessarily go and see their show again because it's going to be kind of the same thing. And over that 4 or 5 days that I'm there, I usually see 20, 25 shows, which is a lot for some people, but I don't think it's taking it it's not too crazy, but it's still, there's an opportunity cost there. I'd rather see something new which excites me, or something spectacular, or someone from another country who I'm not going to get a chance to see again, rather than seeing something which I know I like and is a bit safe. So, but I do often have favourites that I will see, and there are some people who, whatever they do, every year I'll be there because I'm such a big fan. I think the worst thing you can do at the Fringe is you can go up and you can go, oh, I know this. I know who James Acaster is. I've seen him on the telly, right? Oh, I know Phil Jupiters. I've seen him on this panel show. Whatever. Oh, I know Jason Manford is there doing. He's in a 2,000 seat room. You're gonna have a fucking terrible time because you're just going to be seeing. You're going to be in a room full of like middle-aged, grey-haired white people. All watching these tedious shows. I mean, it might be good, right? Yeah. But it's not the Fringe. Right?
No, it's not the Fringe.
A Fringe experience is sitting in like a sweaty room with 50 people in a cavernous room that smells of vomit, with the performer, 5 foot away from you or
I
something
think
like that. That's where the magic happens, right?
And there's nothing better, actually. The greatest feeling at the Fringe is when you find an unknown performer who does a brilliant show. That is the thrill of it. And yes, of course, that doesn't happen every time. To get to that, to have that experience, you're going to watch a lot of crap as well. But I can remember the first time I saw The Noise Next Door. I can remember the first time I saw Adam Riches. I can remember the first time I saw Jack Tucker. These guys, you know, who are not famous, who absolutely, if they were in a different era, would be household names. If we were in the 90s and TV was still a thing with variety, you have to watch some shit.
And some of those acts, they stay like fringe acts with a cult following for many years. Some of them break through. One of my favourite performers for quite a few years was Richard Gadd, right?
Of course, the Netflix show Baby Reindeer.
Yeah, and I saw him 2 or 3 times in very, very small rooms. And he's one of those people where I thought, this guy should be really big. And luckily, you know, the world seemed to agree with that statement, and he's become absolutely huge, and rightly so. But there are still hundreds of those sorts of performers in Edinburgh who do incredible shows every year, and you can see them in small rooms, just like you said, Adam Riches, Jordan Brooks, Phil Ellis, Tony Law. You know, these are people. He's a bit better known, but these are small names who have a big following, but you can still see them in a 50-seater or 100-seater, and it's crazy.
Yeah. I think the other thing, just to touch on briefly, if you've never been to the Fringe, and in a minute we're going to start looking specifically at the magic shows that are on. We can't obviously talk about all of them, but we've kind of highlighted some ones that interest us, whether it sounds like the show itself, a performer who's coming into town who hasn't been here before, or just the concept of a show, which sounds quite interesting. But if you haven't been before, what you should know is that there's 2 sides to the Fringe. There are paid shows and there are free shows. Paid shows, exactly what you imagine, like a traditional theatre show. You just buy a ticket. And if you're going to do that, and you will, you're going to see some paid shows. Top tip, get the Ed Fringe app and book all your tickets on the app. You'll just have instant access to them. They'll scan it as you go in. The queues for some of the box offices can get quite long, can't they? So you want to avoid that if you can by using the app. The free Fringe is exactly what it sounds like. You don't pay to go into the show, but it's kind of a similar format as a street show in that you pay at the end of the performance. However, unlike when you watch Magicians in Covent Garden, you can just sneak away. You can't really do that in a free show. Normally, the performer will wait by the door as you're leaving, and they're going to be stood there with a bucket or a card reader. Minimal donation, I think it's fair to say. Maybe this is a little bit minimal donation. I would say is like £5. I think if you've enjoyed the show, 10. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I think if you have enjoyed the show, £10. If you really feel like you've had the best time, 15, 20 quid. So although it is a free show, it's not really a free show. We always used to have this great little joke, Strange and I. We used to do the free Fringe. And when you tell the audience during the show that, you know, you're going to pay at the end. And the gag we used to use, I think Paul DeBeck gave us this, was so at the end of the show, we're going to be stood over there by the exit. And that exit is a very, very special exit. Strange, tell them why it's a special exit. And Strange would go, it's the only exit. So they're the 2 different things. Do you still feel that there is a direct correlation between quality of the show from free Fringe shows to paid shows? Or do you think over the last decade or so, that line's been blurred a bit? There was for many years, wasn't there, a belief that the free shows were not as good as the paid shows?
I think there's definitely an increase in production value, and the sort of the nicer venues do tend to be the paid venues. Having said that, there are lots of nice venues on the free Fringe. The Voodoo Rooms, for example, is a gorgeous venue. There's other places on the free Fringe, you know, and by the free Fringe is that term encompasses a bunch of different promoters who will put on shows for free. Sometimes it can be very, very bare bones production value, a microphone and maybe a sheet hung up on the back, something like that. And that's less likely to happen on the paid Fringe. But in terms of the quality of the shows, especially if it's comedy or some kinds of magic, I think that the correlation isn't necessarily there. Often some of the award winners will be on the free Fringe, especially because there's kind of an underground call to it. You know, I think that it's more of an exciting experience for a performer to pack out a free room and get a buzz and have people turned away than it is for them to try and get people to pay 10, 15 quid a ticket and struggle a little bit and maybe not have that buzz.
Because that is almost guaranteed, isn't it? If you're on the free Fringe, you are going to get a bigger audience than you will if you're on the paid show. So the performers that are up there, particularly if it's their first year, their second year, what they're desperate for is to be in front of an audience to get some honest feedback of their show. And if you're on a paid show, you might get 7 or 8 or 10 people in. Whereas I don't think I've ever seen a free show with less than 20 people in the audience.
No,
I don't
they
think.
usually do very well.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there can be 200-300 people at a free show. Like, it really can, can't it?
Yeah.
So,
and actually, I don't know how common knowledge this is outside of certain community, but the free Fringe is, of course, a way that the performers have a better chance of making money, especially if they're not big names. Because the way the Fringe works is the performers will usually be hiring the space and then paying for the technician, maybe a percentage of their takings or whatever, guaranteeing the venue some money. But the way that the free venues tend to work is the performer is not charged any money. The money that they take at the end in the hat or on their card machine goes directly to them without any cut.
Yeah.
So if they're a new performer and they have no following and no status, then actually the free Fringe is a better bet for them. And the only reason they wouldn't do it is because they might have a perceived idea in their head that it's a bit of a lower status thing, or they might want to do a show that doesn't allow for the risk of having poorer production value.
It's worth bearing that in mind, actually, that most of the performers up there are not making money, are they? And actually, it's why I think we admire them all so much and we respect everyone who goes up there, because regardless of whether I like you as a person or I like your show, just getting up there, getting to a point where they're up there doing a show is an enormous undertaking. It takes great organisation. It takes a bit of courage, actually. I'll use that word, to go up there, because there's a great unknown. And by the time a performer gets up there with their show, they're normally at least 7 or 8 grand in the red before they've even got up there, when you take into account buying props, your accommodation, travel, all that kind of stuff, and getting flyers printed. I mean, just to go in the main brochure, you're looking at, I think the advert's about 400 quid, isn't it? The smallest advert. Yeah. So listen, I think we should get onto magic. So we've been talking generally, I think, for a bit too long. I'll just ask you straight away the very direct question. Didn't tell you I was going to ask you, so I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your absolute top tip for magic this Fringe? What is the one thing that, it doesn't have to be the biggest show or the smallest, but just for whatever reason, your own personal subjective reason, what magic show this year are you most looking forward to?
Dom Chambers' Magic Hunt.
Well, yeah. I mean, Dom, obviously, as you know, has been on the podcast before. There was a little bit of uncertainty whether he was actually going to be here this year, but he is back, isn't he? And Dom Chambers' Magic Hunt, just sounds funny to say that. He's back.
You think he's fully aware of that?
Yes, absolutely. I think he is too. When I saw him last year, he was, for me, the real sort of like, wow, holy shit, I found a new magician here that I hadn't seen perform before. He's from Australia, if you don't know. So definitely, he's probably not going to come to the Fringe every year. So if you're going up this year, you should definitely check him out. I think
he is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
He is extremely funny. He's a great magician. He's completely aware of his character. Some of the stuff that I've seen him do in other years is quite frankly disgusting, to the point where normally I would not really enjoy it, but it's so kind of profound and beautiful in the level of how disgusting it is, but I couldn't help but admire it. Yeah. So I was a massive fan. I think he's really good. He's very humble, and he's very. I just think he's amazing. I'm not sure if I'm going to be giving a little bit away. There's a possibility he might be seen to the broader magic community in this country at some point in the next year or so. I'm not going to say anything else.
Interesting.
But
we do love a rumour here.
Just a rumour. My prediction will be that magicians, if they do get to see him, they are absolutely going to love it, and it will be something which that we'll be talking about. So
he normally collaborates with Simon Coronel, doesn't he? FISM winner. And so I assume Simon's been part of this again behind the scenes. You have spotted something. This is why you subscribe to the Magicians Podcast Network, because you have spotted an amazing little thing that's going on with these two in a completely different environment. Do you want to tell everybody what you spotted?
Well, right. So Dom Chambers, along with Simon Coronel, who is the current FISM Grand Prix winner for Close-Up Magic. Simon Coronel is going to be at the Fringe this year, but he's not in any show. They have, I presume, written, produced, I'm not sure how much they've done, but they have certainly come up with a kids show, which is called Mojo and Jimmy. It's a giant tomato and a monkey. The image for that show on the website, on the Fringe website, I don't think is particularly that good.
So if you're watching on Spotify right now, I'm layering the trailer over for you here. If you're on Apple Podcasts, I've put a link to it in the synopsis if you want to go and look at it.
The image for the show is it looks like an AI image of a tomato and a monkey. They may have had someone to draw it, I don't know, but that's what it looked like to me. I don't think it's an amazing image, and I would certainly flick past it. But if you look at the trailer, you see it's just the 30 seconds of that. It looks like a lot of fun. And if I was going to take my family up or take some kids to watch a show, 100%, I'm going to go and see it anyway, because I think anything that those two guys put together, I want to see it, because they've never let me down in the past. They're both extremely deep thinkers. They've both got, wicked sense of humour, and I'm a big fan of both of them. So I will be in that show, kids or otherwise.
I think it's interesting. I don't know anything about this. You only told me about it a few minutes ago. My guess would be that they've seen some of the commercial success that Mario has had. He was there last year. He was on our Ed Fringe podcast last year, and he's currently in the West End of London now doing his show, and he's also done Broadway as well. So I think it's pretty obvious that commercial success that Mario has had is obviously going to attract other magicians to the family, children kind of show. Whether that is exactly the case with this, I don't know. It will be my guess that it is.
I think it's any kids show at the Fringe actually tends to do quite well. And I think that because both Dom and Simon have been around Fringe festivals in, Australia, the US, Edinburgh, and they've been involved in that scene for quite a few years. Eventually, if you spend enough time in that world, it's going to be fairly apparent to you that the kids' shows are doing better on the box office than your show, purely because there are fewer of them. There are people who take their kids up. So, of course, if your mum and dad taking 2 kids, there's 4 tickets rather than 2. The venues, they always want to fill that sort of late morning, early afternoon slots. So there's definitely potential for them. And rightly or wrongly, there's perhaps a stigma with kids shows where it's not, just like there is with kids performers, it's perceived to be not as a cooler thing to do. Whether that is true or not, I think is very, very questionable, because some of, like that Mario the Maker show, or like some of the bubble shows that are up there, they really are world-class productions, and there's no real reason why anyone should be looking down at them. In fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
But I think that Simon and Dom have definitely seen how well the kid shows have done and gone, well, let's do one.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's those two guys doing it, I couldn't be more excited.
I'm looking forward to it. So listen, I think it's fair to say, I don't think anyone would argue with this, that the biggest show that's going up there this year that has really come out of left field, that everyone's like, holy shit, he's doing the Fringe, is Arturo Brachetti, who is...
Brachetti.
Brachetti. Is it Brachetti or Brachetti?
You're thinking of bruschetta, aren't you?
I'm thinking of the food, probably. I'm quite hungry at the minute.
Into Bella Italia. Arturo Brachetti, I think. I could be wrong.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Arturo Brachetti or Brachetti, I apologise, whichever way it is. But this is obviously, if you were at Edinburgh a few years ago and you saw, he did his whole show there.
Blackpool.
What did I just say?
Edinburgh.
Did I say Edinburgh? Sorry, Blackpool. Yes, Blackpool a few years ago. Then you will remember that incredible show which you put on there. This is a big room he's in, isn't he? I assume he's been brought over with a promoter. This is a 1,000-seat room that he's got to fill every day. And let's be honest, he's not famous in this country to the public. So it's a big, ambitious project. There is no doubt, though, once this show opens, that it's going to get great reviews. The word is going to spread. I've heard people say this about Edinburgh. You can lose all the money in the first few days. You can. It's like, even though you might be full and sold out towards the end, actually, you've got to get that wheel moving quickly when you're under a lot of financial pressure early to make sure you don't lose too much money. So I'll be very, very interested to see this show. I think every magician going up there should see it. Would you agree with that? It's fair. You can't miss it, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big show this year, because nothing else like it. It spans various different genres. It's spectacular. He's been around for many years. He's in his 60s. He looks amazing for a guy of that age. Even though he's older, he hasn't stopped innovating. He's a real artist in the true sense of the word. I think that it will get a buzz because it's just going to stand apart from a lot of stuff. I think the only thing that lets it down for me, just on paper, is the fact the room is so big. Like I said, I really like fringe experiences in smaller venues, and I feel that there's a slight issue when you get a fringe show in a room of 500-600 plus, because I feel that feels more like a traditional theatre space, and in that kind of space, I would hope for better production values in line with the space and the environment. So a fringe venue, because there are so many shows on in the venue in the day, I think it's probably hard to do that. You have less time to get in and get out, and you're doing it on a daily basis. I could be wrong. Maybe there are not many shows in that room, so he has the opportunity to bring over a big set and go all in. If he'd have been in like a 300 seat room, I would say absolutely 100%. It's a must see. You got to see it. 1,000 seats, I would say definitely see it, but get there 20 minutes before, because it's usually free seating. You don't want to be at the back for that.
Yeah, definitely not. Also, we should mention Colin Cloud is also in a very, very big room.
He's at the McEwen Hall,
right,
which is more central than the EICC where Artura is.
Colin's a friend of the podcast. We obviously did the podcast a few months ago with the news what broke when he moved from Shin Lim's show to his own venue. Interesting to see, by the way. We haven't mentioned this on the podcast, but Shin Lim, now they've closed the Mirage, is now moving to the Venetians. So he's moved across, and now Peter Antonio is now the mind reader in Shin Lim's show. Anyway, back to the Fringe. I think I'm going to say, Colin knows I have to be honest on this podcast. I'm very interested to see how good Colin's show is this year, because he's got a lot on his schedule at the moment. To open a Vegas show and then to be a few weeks later heading to the Fringe, is there just enough hours in the day ultimately to put together a show like this in a massive room in Edinburgh? Where would your focus be, Edinburgh or the Fringe?
I don't think.
Sorry, Las Vegas or the Fringe. What I mean,
I wouldn't worry about that. I don't think there are many people in the world of magic who work harder than Colin Cloud and who are more hungry for success and to do well than Colin Cloud. So the fact that he is, opening his Vegas show, doing a month for the Fringe, I wouldn't worry about the quality of the show in any way. I think he's a extremely hard worker. He's a deep thinker. He's been performing a lot for many years. He is, way ahead of the game in terms of being ahead of other performers you might see at the Fringe. My only doubt with that show, again, is the size of the room. The McEwen Hall is a massive room. A few years ago, I was in Edinburgh for a month, and I had a pass that let me get into various shows. And I went and I saw a show, and I sat in the balcony of that venue, and I felt very, very disconnected from it. And as a result, I didn't particularly enjoy it. Like I say, these problems can be allayed if you get there early. One of the things that Edinburgh newcomers are probably shocked by is when you turn up 10 minutes before the show starts and you go to join the back of the queue, and someone goes, no, that's where the queue continues, and you go, oh, okay, and you follow the queue round, and you go, no, that, and you look around and the queue is going on for like half a mile or something. You go, you're kidding me. And all those people are going to get into that room, and and if you're at the back, it's not good. You're going to, especially in a large room, you are going to be cramped in, and you are going to have a bad view. But I would say, I wouldn't have any doubt about Colin's show. In fact, his show last year, I think he did a limited run in the same venue, and it was on deeply sort of personal issues, and it sounded very interesting. So I would say that he's very much someone I think should be on the list. I
think these two things link together quite well. We saw Colin and Ben Hart do BGT together earlier this year. I have to be honest, not my favourite thing I've seen either of them do. They definitely work better apart, in my opinion.
I think both of those guys are great magicians.
Likewise, I do. I think they're both fantastic. I couldn't quite look. I get it.
I understand why they did it.
Yeah, they're both doing the Fringe, so they both need the marketing. But I hope we never see either of these two brilliant solo performers working together in an ensemble again. I really hope that is the case. Ben's show this year, the rumours I'm hearing is he's going to do the show in the round again. I saw it last year. We covered it. This year, though, if you've never seen Ben before, this is the year to see him. The rumour I'm hearing is that this is a best of show. Oh, right. So this is going to be, and bear in mind, this guy's done Edinburgh 10, 11 times, maybe more. You're going to see 55, 60 minutes of his absolute A-list best materials in the round. I think Ben's just really hitting his peak now. I think he's around 30 years old. He's just got a lot of experience under his belt, but he's also still got that youth and that energy. So Ben is a top tip I think, this year to do that. This next one I want to talk about, you found what looks like an absolute little diamond here. Again, you've done this. Diary of a Magician. I'll try and say the name. Mu Swan Chang. From what we've seen in this trailer, it looks like FISM level magic at the Fringe, doesn't it? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and in fact, this is, if I hadn't have researched to come and talk to you today, I may not have seen this, because it's fairly generic looking title, not particularly exciting in the write-up. But the trailer that I found on YouTube, it's got some very pretty and elegant looking magic. And it's not the sort of thing you see at the Fringe, actually. There was a show a few years ago called Snap. Did you ever see that?
I didn't, but I remember you telling me this was like a number of Korean manipulators,
That's
wasn't
right. Yeah, it had Youngmin Kim, the guy with the sand, and it had I forget the name, but he did the sort of manipulation act that rewound itself and went backwards. Remember that? So this was the last time at the Fringe where this kind of show was on. This is a solo performer, and in the trailer you can see him with like throw out streamers and colourful manipulation cards and all this kind of stuff. For me, I mean, as soon as I saw the cards, I was adding it to my must-do list, because like I love all that stuff, and I think that's like about a 90-seat room. So I mean, let's be honest, where in the world are you going to be able to get to see someone doing that kind of level of manipulation in that kind of room for like, what, 12, 15 quid, whatever it costs?
Also, can I just add this in, something you haven't mentioned there, is you're also going to get the chance to watch this kind of magic with the public. And actually, it's very interesting to see how they react to it. I won't say any more than that. If you've never watched a world-class manipulator with the general public, you should, when the moment arrives, just have a little look around the room and see how people are reacting. They've never seen anything like it before, and they react in a very, very different way.
Well, so think about how often we go to the Fringe. How often do you see that kind of show in Edinburgh?
Never. Once every few years.
And even if they're like magic fans and they go to the Fringe a lot, they're going to be used to seeing a very British style of magic, which usually
tricks and gags
done by one guy. If he's thought about it, he might have some music, as people walk up to the stage. He's been on the Hankley hot list, or whatever the modern equivalent of that is. Do you know what I mean? They've been doing a lot of buying that year, and I don't know. That's, for me, that style of show is a less interesting, but it looks good to me. In fact, it's come over from Taiwan as well. It's a lot of effort.
Can't miss this one.
I'm excited about that. That's on my must-see list.
There's a couple of other things we should touch on. Just to talk about youth for a second. The Fringe, I think, ultimately is. Well, do you know what? I want to touch on this briefly.
Talking of youth, we can talk about someone who's very young doing it.
That's what I was going to talk about. Right. You know where I was going with this? And this is potentially... A few years ago, I heard Preston Nyman was very, very young when he first did the Fringe. But I think that this next performer is possibly even a little bit younger, and he's the current Young Magician of the Year, Harry Merlin Piper, who's coming over to do just a few days in the middle of the Fringe.
2 days in the middle of the Fringe.
Yeah.
In the week that I'm going to be there, actually.
Yeah, I think definitely worth, if you've not seen Harry, you should definitely go and check this show out. He does manips and does it pretty well.
I was just going to say, where else can you see someone doing colour card manipulation where you can see it at Harry Merlin Piper's show?
Absolutely. Do you know, there's a couple of people going up there this year for the first time, who I think is always interesting when you see performers going up there for the first time. Andrew Frost is going up there. Cards on the table. Got 2 amazing quotes on his publicity, one from Blaine, one from Darren Brown, both saying incredible magician. If you've not seen Andrew Frost before, I'm sure you have. Possibly the greatest card magician around at the minute, doing really exciting, interesting things. His Instagram is definitely worth a little look. I will say this, I love Andrew. I've seen Andrew do a couple of stage spots. He's got a problem, and his problem is not his fault. It's how you present card tricks when you're stood up on the same level as the audience, when you're not raised up on a stage, as most Fringe venues you're not. You're normally level with the audience. They're a rake looking down. Doing the kind of card tricks that he does, actually being able to make sure they work for the audience, but also they're not flashing. He's got an uphill struggle there with the kind of magic that he does. So I'm very interested to see this. I've seen him do a couple of like 10, 20-minute spots. There's no doubt about his actual talent, his work ethic. He's got a lovely, warm way of doing it. But I'd love to maybe talk to him about this. I can see that with the style of magic he's chosen, he's got a problem with angles and the way to present it, when ultimately these are normally card tricks shot for Instagram. Your thoughts on this? Are you excited to see it?
Yeah, I am, because I saw Andrew Frost's Instagram a few years ago, and again, because when I saw he's doing a Fringe show, I looked him up and I watched a couple of his videos this morning. And the guy has got crazy skills, right? So that's very interesting, because the style of card magic that he does, it doesn't usually tend to transfer into any kind of public performance for the, at all, whether that be, Magic for Hire or the Fringe Festival or whatever. People like Andrew Frost tend to be part of this very, very niche world of selling products, selling memberships, selling downloads, giving tuition, filming at the table lectures, all that kind of stuff. And that world, it never tends to really kind of go anywhere other than just within itself, does it? And there are some amazing magicians who are who are part of that world, who I love watching. But it's very unusual to see them taking that out of that environment and taking it to the public. In fact, I can't really think of an example at the Edinburgh Fringe of someone who I would consider to be that kind of level of card guy doing a show like that. Can you think of an
nor
example?
can I. No,
can't think of
no,
anything.
absolutely not. No.
So that to me is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And although there's some argument where people could say, well, the public don't recognise the skill. At Edinburgh, I would say they absolutely do. The Edinburgh audience is extremely savvy.
Yes, they are.
They are.
Absolutely.
They are very aware of what's out there. They're very knowledgeable. They tend to be quite geeky. They know what they like, and they can clock when someone is gifted or talented, for sure.
Absolutely.
So I think he'll do well. I'm going to be buying a ticket for sure.
Lewis Fuller is up there this year with his very first Edinburgh show, Ungentlemanly Conduct. Very interested to see this. Do you know what? I can say this about this guy. When you see the photo of him, I think naturally for most men, there's an element of jealousy that creeps in. He's a very good-looking guy, very handsome, young, but he looks like a younger Paul Martin, doesn't he? He's like, all right, mate. He's got a kind of like, what a lovely guy he is, actually. Yes, I have. He's very, very warm. It's that classic don't judge a book by its cover. He's that kind of thing where you go, who's this wise guy? And I do always admire someone. I can tell this guy is probably got loads of gigs and he's probably in a huge demand for wherever the venues are. He's working corporate stuff, private parties. And so for someone at this stage to take a month off and plan it, like we said earlier, you have to be very organised to go up there and try it. Huge admiration. I'm really looking forward to seeing this show. Yeah.
First time I saw Lewis Fuller, I think I saw a picture of when he was on BGT, and I was like, okay. And then when I was involved in the Magic Circle Christmas show, Lee Hathaway booked one act for the New Year's show. That I booked everyone else. He booked one act. He booked Lewis Fuller, and I was like, okay. Right. And then I met him, and the first time I saw him, he had a big bottle of wine in his back pocket, and he was like striding towards me, all white, and I was like, oh my god, here we go. And then I was like, oh shit! I kind of I got angry at myself for being so judgmental, because I started chatting to him. I went, this guy's actually pretty funny. And then I saw him performing, and I went, oh, he's actually extremely self-aware, and he's very likable, and he's a good performer. And if he does some of the stuff that he was doing at the Magic Circle or something, even similar to that, he will certainly do some stuff that's going to surprise people. So I would say, yeah, I'm ashamed to say that I felt that way when I first saw him.
Me too.
But I like him a lot. I think he's a very funny guy, and
I think I'm going to say this actually could potentially be a big hit at the Fringe that at the minute, it hasn't started yet, I think this could cause quite a stir, actually. Hey, one of the things at the Fringe I've always noticed is quite hard sometimes if I'm a night owl. You go to bed early, I go to bed late. I love a late night show. And for some reason, there's never actually a lot of magic shows on really late. There is this year. Cameron Gibson, Elliot Bibby and Luke Ozy are doing a show. They've got together doing a show called Insane Magic, which they did last year. However, it's
a great success.
It's a great success. In fact, this time they've added a second show, so it's called After Dark. They're at the Patter House, and they're there at 4:30 and I think also 11 o'clock as well. So if you're looking for a late night magic show, another top tip. I always go to this every year. If you're looking for a late night show that's free, it's always really fun. Voodoo Rooms. There is a free Fringe show there called the Faraway Cabaret. And it's just madness. It's organised by a guy called Luke Meredith, and you'll see 6 or 7 acts, normally a bit of everything, magic, burlesque, comedy, and it's just got a a lovely atmosphere in the room. The Voodoo Rooms is a great venue, especially late at night. So if you're looking for a late night show, Faraway Cabaret, top tip. I want to touch on a performer with you that might surprise you, actually. Sean Alexander is up there this year for the first time.
Has he got a jet ski?
Well, we all remember
Show
this.
the jet ski.
Yeah. We have a clip of the jet ski. Sean Alexander, years ago, you may recall, was in an illusion act called Mist, and was pretty successful for a number of years, working on cruise ships. And
He made me banished once.
did he really?
Yeah, Blackpool. When they entered the competition, he did like something that looks kind of maybe similar to Copperfield 13. Get the whole audience up and banish them. And they had enough people to do it, but I was like about 5 or 6 votes from the front, and I think I turned to Hudson and went, "I'm going up." And I just went up, and I was banished by Mist.
Wow,
yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
This show is called One Moment in Time, and I think this is very interesting. I don't know Sean at all, but here's my observation. He's been around a while, actually, and actually when you're sometimes a bit more established in life, I know he's got children and probably all sorts of commitments that we all get when we get into our 40s. The fact that he's actually going up there and taking the time off, and he's going up there with something that's clearly completely new. My guess would be my guess is this, because it's something I think about a lot, is when you're an illusionist, you do have to try and find a smaller scale way of working. And so I'm sure over the years, perhaps he's done some smaller scale shows. So I don't imagine this is an illusion show, but this is a performer who I've never seen perform live other than that one time at Blackpool about 15 years ago. He's done a lot of shows, so this could be something worth checking out, actually. Now, this is another one that you found absolutely amazing. I'm going to put this on the screen now on Spotify. If you're on Apple Podcasts, go to the synopsis now. This is Igor Lipinski's Piano Illusions. This is unbelievable.
Well, I am absolutely gutted because
sadly it's not on the whole month.
He's doing a limited run. I think he's on when you're there, right?
Yes,
but not when I'm there. This clip of him playing the piano with one hand, doing the card production with the other, bearing in mind he's also using his feet for the pedals for the piano. I was like, what? That's the kind of clip which it should have gone viral by now and everyone should have seen, right? Because it's crazy. And you think about it, this guy, if you look into him, he is a concert pianist. And obviously, to become a virtuoso pianist, he has also taken that discipline, which is used to learn the piano, and use it to learn magic as well. So just from that clip alone, I'd be like, that is very, very interesting. Well, I don't know what else he's going to be doing, but even if, from what I saw on that video, I'd happily just listen to him play the piano for a bit as well, because it's very, he's obviously absolutely excellent at it. But I've never seen anything like that at the Fringe. I've never seen anything like that in general. Have you?
No, I haven't. And again, maybe he's considering doing the whole run next year. So sadly, he's only up there for a few days. But this looks absolutely incredible. We found again, this is you. You found what looks like a cruise ship magician who is coming over. Is this the guy here, Martin Brock? Have I got the right name?
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I could tell from the video promoting the show looks like he's a cruise ship guy, but I like his look. He looks like he's thought about how he's dressed. His stage production looked good, and I'm a big believer in that saying: the way you do anything is the way you do everything. Right. So if you're thinking that carefully about how you look and your set and that sort of thing, I'm sure his Fringe show is going to be of high standard as well. So again, it's a completely different style to what else we've been looking at. It looks very commercial, which I think is. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I think that's a positive. But never heard of him. But I think it's on my short list of shows for sure.
Kevin Quantum, who is a stalwart of the Edinburgh Fringe, been going up there for many years, doing something quite interesting this year. Got 2 shows on, one of which I was stunned when I saw it. Tickets were £50 and I was like, what?
That's a lot for the Fringe.
Yes, so actually this is really interesting to hear. Basically, Kevin's got 2 shows on. One is a Fringe show. He's at the Gilded Balloon Patter House. There's a lot on in the Patter House this year, by the way, including Hudson and Hudson. So
good location,
it's a great location.
It used to be a sea venues, didn't it?
Absolutely.
But now it's a Gilded Balloon. It's very, very central.
Yeah, really good. And there's lots of magic on in there. So if you're wandering around and you're looking for something to do, maybe go to the Patter House, because there is lots of magic on there. Kevin Conn, Anti-Gravity. So this is his Fringe show. that's going to be on for the whole month, and it's Kevin, so it's going to be great.
So what's the thinking behind this higher ticket show?
So I called him to ask, because I was like, I didn't just want to guess. So this second show which he's doing, where the ticket prices are higher, it's not really a fringe show, is the reality. He lives in Edinburgh, and it's a bit like Chamber Magic in New York. Oh. It's a show which he does regularly in Edinburgh. It's in the posh hotel, and like Chamber Magic, it's priced for the nicer clientele. And so it just so happens to be that he is doing this show while the Fringe is going on as well. The hotel wanted to give it a go. So he did say to me, actually, it does sound quite interesting that the magic in the show is very much about the kind of magic that fooled your heroes. It's quite an interesting idea, I think. There's one of the things we should just touch on very briefly. There's so many names here. We can't go through all of them, where you just see they're back again for another year. And like I said, I think it's best I not name them, but there are now many, many magicians who are probably on their 7th or 8th Fringe up there. They go back every year. And actually, I look at some of them, their marketing often looks very similar. I don't know if the material stays similar as well. I'm not sure that's good to be seen going up there every year with very, very similar stuff.
Why not?
I just think that it's a festival where it's all about new work, isn't it? And so I think if you're up there for your 5th or 6th year with a poster that looks very similar, or or the same kind of thing, I do wonder.
Do you think there's an element where people just like being part of it, and they might just have found a sort of a comfortable space for them? Maybe it's a certain size of room. Maybe they don't want to stress themselves out too much with coming up with an hour of new material. Maybe they've found a way to monetize it.
Yeah,
they can stay with a friend, or they have very cheap accommodation. They have a bit of a following, and they're able to make a profit. Be in Edinburgh for the whole month, which, let's face it, is an amazing place to be for August.
No, that is true. I think a lot, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of the free Fringe guys make money there, which is absolutely fair enough. There's a couple of guys I can name actually who go up there a lot who don't do this. So who I admire: Pete Heat, Tom Brace. These guys, they go up there every year. They're in the same venues again, but it looks different every year. It looks like, okay, this is fresh. I think there's some magicians that go up there who they just don't quite tweak the marketing enough to get me excited enough about going to see them again.
I know what you mean. There are some magicians that I've seen who I've seen their first show and liked it very much, and then I've gone back the following year, and it's basically been 70 to 80% the same as the first show. And I'm not going to go back a third time. Put it that way. I'd always prefer to see something new and something interesting. I'm sure everyone has their reasons for doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, listen, we talked a lot about magic. We're going to have to wrap this up now, but give me your top tip for who you would go to see if not magic.
See, wow, that's such a hard thing to answer, because art, comedy, it's all such a subjective thing, isn't it? What I like is probably what other people aren't going to like. Having said that, I would say if you want to have like a fun, crazy Fringe experience in a sweaty room, a couple of performers I would check out who you may not have heard of. I mentioned one of them earlier, Phil Ellis. I know Strange. I told Strange to go see him last year, and he absolutely loved it. I think he's a British comedian. He's got a bit of a following in Edinburgh. It's a little bit shambolic. I find him very, very funny. And another act who I would say is worth looking at is a guy called Josh Glance, Glanc, who's Australian, who does sort of visual comedy, knockabout stuff, very well choreographed, good fun. I would say that's a show that I thought was fun. And the reason I mention him is I feel like it's nothing like magic, but it's close enough to magic magicians would like. Magicians always like Tim Vine, for example.
Yeah.
I feel like I could comfortably recommend Josh Glance to magicians, knowing that they'll probably like him because he's contemporary, but he's also quite silly. And I think it's a lot of fun.
My top tip would be Adam Rich's. I think you put me onto him 5 or 6 years ago. Just the most unbelievable talent. Does something different every year. He's in a different venue this year. His show this year is called Jimmy, and it's about the greatest tennis player on earth. I don't need to tell you any more than that. Just go. You'll be you'll have a great time. He's on at 9:30 at a venue called Summer Hall. So he is my top tip, Adam Riches. Rob, this has been fantastic. I think we've given everybody.
You haven't mentioned Hudson.
Well, we did briefly.
We haven't mentioned him enough not to get a message from Hudson saying there wasn't enough of a mention.
Hudson. Well, we do talk about the Hudson Edinburgh show every single week on the What's Going On podcast.
It's not going to be enough.
It's not going to be enough. They, of course, they're on. It's their second year up there, isn't it?
Go and see Hudson.
Go and see Hudson. They're at the Patter House as well. And it's their second year up there. And you've heard on What's Going On, all the stuff they're doing. It's going to be great. They've had some great people helping them this year, haven't they? Barry and Stuart has directed the show. So, wow. There you go. I can't wait to see it. Have a wonderful Fringe. Have a great time up there.
Can't wait.
We will be making an Ed Fringe podcast while we're up there as well, like I did last year. That is actually one of our most popular podcasts that's ever been listened to. So I'm going to try and do that again while I'm up there. I can genuinely say this is the most excited I've been for the Fringe in probably a decade.
I think it could be potentially the best year for Magic that I've ever seen.
I agree.
Just looking through the brochure with some of the stuff, I think I could probably fill the whole trip with Magic shows. I think that's how interesting some of them look to me. I'm not going to do that because I'm not stupid. But there's so much to Magic that looks very good. That sometimes some years I won't see any Magic because I think it just looks a bit boring. But this year that's not the case. I'm going to be seeing some stuff that looks fascinating.
Agreed. Yeah, there's a lot to choose from. Thank you to the subscriber to listening. Thank you, Rob James, our Ed Fringe correspondent. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and have a lovely evening or morning or afternoon whenever you're listening to this. Thanks.